the Apocrypha, the book of Judith. We'll continue on starting with chapter 10.1 to finish. Now after that she, Judith, had ceased to cry unto mighty God Ahiah of Israel and had made an end to all these words. Basically, Judith had prayed to mighty God Ahiah to have her help the children of Israel against their enemy. She rose where she had fallen down and called her maid and went down into the house in which she had abode in the Sabbath days and in her feast days, and pulled off the sackcloth which she had on, and put off the garments of her widowhood, and washed her body all over with water, and anointed herself with precious ointment, and braided her hair on her head, and put on an attire upon it, and put on her garments of gladness wherewith she had clad during the life of Manasseh her husband. And she, Judith, took sandals upon her feet, and put about her neck bracelets, and her chains, and her rings, and her earrings, and all her ornaments, and decked herself bravely to allure the eyes of all the men that should see her. Then she gave her maid a bottle of wine and a cruse of oil, and filled a bag with parched corn and lumps of figs, and with fine bread. So she folded all these things together and laid them upon her. Thus they went forth to the gate of the city of Bethulia, and found standing there Ozias and the ancient of the city of Jabris and Charmes. And when they saw her, that her countenance was altered, and her apparel was changed, they wondered at her beauty very greatly, and said unto her, the God of our fathers, which is mighty God Ahiah, give thee favor, and accomplish thine enterprises to the glory of the children of Israel, and to exaltation of Jerusalem. Then they worshiped mighty God Ahiah. And she said unto them, command the gates of the city to be open unto me, that I may go forth to accomplish the things whereof you have spoken with me. So they commanded the young men to open unto her, and she had spoken. And when they had done so, Judith went out, she and her maid with her, and the men of the city looked after her until she had gone down the mountain, until she had passed the valley, and could see her no more. Thus they went straight forward in the valley, and first watched of the Assyrians met her, and took her, and asked her, of what people art thou? And whence comest thou? And whither thou go? And she said, I am a woman of the Hebrews, and I fled from them, for they shall be given you to be consumed. And I am coming before Holophernes, the chief captain of your army, to declare words of truth, and I will show him a way whereby he shall go, and win all the hill country, without losing the body or life of any one of his men. Now when the men heard of her words, and beheld her countenance, they wondered greatly at her beauty, and said unto her, Thou hast saved thy life, in that thou hast hastened to come down to the presence of our Lord. Now therefore come to his tent, and some of us shall conduct thee until they have delivered thee into his hands. And when thou standest before him, be not afraid in thine heart, but show unto him according to thy words, and he will entreat thee well. Then they chose out of them 100 men to accompany her and her maid, and they brought her to the tent of Holophernes. Then was there a concourse throughout all the camp, for her coming was noised among the tents, and they came about her as she stood without the tent of Holophernes, till they told him of her. And they wondered at her beauty, and admired the children of Israel because of her. And every one said to his neighbor, Who would despise this people that have among them such women? Surely it is not good that one man of them be left, who being let go might deceive the whole earth. And they that lay near Holophernes went out, and all his servants, and they brought her into the tent. Now Holophernes rested upon his bed under a canopy which was woven with purple and gold and emeralds and precious stones. So they showed him of her, and he came out before his tent with silver lamps going before him. And when Judith was come before him and his servants, they all marveled at the beauty of her, and in her countenance, and she fell down upon her face and did reverence unto him, and his servants took her up. Then said Holophernes unto her, Woman, be of good comfort, fear not in thine heart, for I never heard any that was willing to serve Nebuchadnezzar, the king of all the earth. Now therefore, if thy people that dwelleth in the mountains had not set light by me, I would not have lifted up my spear against them, but they have done these things to themselves. But now tell me wherefore thou art fled from them, and art come unto us, for thou art come for safeguard, but be of good comfort that thou shalt live this night and hereafter. For none shall hurt thee, be and treat thee well, as they do the servants of King Nebuchadnezzar, my lord. Then Judith said unto him, Receive the words of thy servant, and suffer thine handmaid to speak in thy presence, and I will declare no lie to my lord this night. If thou wilt follow the words of thine handmaid, mighty God Ahiah will bring the things perfectly to pass by thee, and my lord shall not fail of his purposes. As Nebuchadnezzar, king of all the earth, liveth, as his power liveth, who hath sent thee for the upholding of every living thing. For not only men shall serve him by thee, but also the beasts of the field, and the cattle, and the fowls of the air shall live by the power under Nebuchadnezzar and all his house. For we have heard of thy wisdom and thy policies, and it is reported in all the earth that thou only art excellent in all the kingdom, and mighty in knowledge, and wonderful in feats of war. Now as concerning the matter which Achior did speak in thy council, we have heard his words, for the men of Bethulia save him, and he declared unto them all that he had spoken unto thee. Therefore, O Lord and Governor, respect not his word, but lay it up in thine heart, for it is true, for our nation shall not be punished, neither can sword prevail against them, except they sin against their God, mighty God Ahiah. And now that my Lord be not defeated and frustrated of his purpose, even death is now fallen upon them, and their sin had overtaken them, wherewith they will provoke their God, mighty God Ahiah, to anger, whensoever they shall do that which is not fit to be done. For their victuals fail them, and all their water is scant, and they have determined to lay hands upon their cattle, and purpose to consume all those things that mighty God Ahiah hath forbidden them to eat by his laws, and are resolved to spend the first fruits of the tents of wine and oil, which they had sanctified and reserved for the priests that serve in Jerusalem before the face of our mighty God, which is Ahiah. That which thing it is not lawful for any of the people so much as to touch with their hands. For they have sent some of Jerusalem, because they also that dwelt there have done the like thing, to bring them a license for the Senate. Now, when they shall bring them word, they will forthwith do it, and they shall be given to thee to be destroyed the same day. Wherefore I, thine handmaid, knowing all this, am fled from their presence, and mighty God Ahiah has sent me to work things with thee, wherewith all the earth shall be astonished. For thy servant is religious, serveth the mighty God of heaven, Ahiah, day and night. Now therefore, my Lord, I will remain with thee, and thy servant will go out by night into the valley, and I will pray unto mighty God Ahiah, and he will tell me when they have committed their sins. And I will come and show it unto thee. Then thou shalt go forth with all thine army, and there shall be none of them that shall resist thee. And I will lead thee through the midst of Judea. Excuse me a second. Sorry about that. Chapter 11:19. And I will lead thee through the midst of Judea until thou come before Jerusalem, and I will set thy throne in the midst thereof, and thou shalt drive them as sheep that have no shepherd, and a dog shall not so much as open his mouth at thee. For these things were told me according to my foreknowledge, and they were declared unto me, and I am sent to tell thee. Then her words pleased Holophernes and all his servants, and they marveled at her wisdom, and said, There is not such a woman from one end of the earth to another, both for beauty of face and wisdom of words. Likewise Holophernes said unto her, Mighty God Ahiah had done well to send thee before the people, that strength might be in our hands, and destruction upon them that lightly regard my Lord. And now thou art both beautiful in thy countenance and witty in thy words. Surely if thou hast do as thou hast spoken, that mighty God Ahiah shall be my God, and thou shalt dwell in the house of King Nebuchadnezzar, and shall be renowned through the whole earth. Then he commanded to bring her in where his plate was set, and bade that they should prepare for her of his own meats, and that she should drink of his own wine. And Judith said, I will not eat thereof, lest there be an offense, but provision shall be made for me of things that I have bought. Then Holophernes said unto her, If thy provision shall fail, how shall we give thee the like? For there be none with us of thy nation. Then said Judith unto him, As that thy soul liveth, my lord, thine handmaid shall not spend those things that I have before mighty God Ahiah work by my hand, the things that he had determined. Then the servants of Holophernes brought her into the tent, and she slept till midnight. And she arose when it was toward the morning watch, and sent to Holophernes, saying, Let my lord now command that thine handmaid may go forth unto prayer. Then Holophernes commanded his guard that they should not stay her. Thus she abode in the camp 3 days, and went out in the night into the valley of Bethulia, and washed herself in a fountain of water by the camp. And when she came out, she besought mighty God Ahiah, the mighty God of Israel, to direct her way to the raising up of the children of her people. So she came in clean, and remained in the tent until she did eat her meat at evening. And in the 4th day of Holophernes made a feast to his own servants only, and called none of the officers to the banquet. Then said he to Bagos the eunuch, who had charged over all that he had, Go now and persuade this Hebrew woman which is with thee, that she come unto us, and eat and drink with us. For lo, it will be a shame for our persons if we shall let such a woman go, not having had her company. For if we draw her not unto us, she will laugh us to scorn. Then went Bagos from the presence of Holophernes, and came to her, and he said, Let not this fair damsel fear to come to my lord, and to be honored in his presence, and drink wine, and be merry with us, and be made this day as one of the daughters of the Assyrians, which serve in the house of Nebuchadnezzar. Then said Judith unto him, Who am I now, that I should gainsay my lord? Surely whatsoever pleaseth him I will do speedily, and it shall be my joy unto the day of my death. So she arose and decked herself with her apparel and all her woman's attire, and her maid went and laid soft skins on the ground for her over against Holophernes, which she had received of Boaz for her daily use, that she might sit and eat upon them. Now when Judith came in and sat down, Holophernes, his heart was ravished with her, and his mind was moved, and he desired greatly her company, for he waited a time to deceive her from the day that he had seen her. Then said Holophernes unto her, Drink now, and be merry with us. So Judith said, I will drink now, my lord, because my life is magnified in me this day more than all the days since I was born. Then she took and ate and drank before him with her maid had prepared. And Holophernes took great delight in her, and drank more wine than he had drunk at any time in one day since he was born. Now when the evening was come, and his servants made haste to depart, and Boaz shut his tent without, and dismissed the waiters from the presence of his lord, and they went to their beds, for they were all weary, because their feast had been long. And Judith was left alone in the tent, and Holophernes lying alone upon his bed, for he was filled with wine. Now Judith had commanded her maid to stand without her bedchamber, and to wait for her. coming forth as she did daily, for she said she would go forth to her prayers, and she spake to Boaz according to the same purpose. So all went forth, and none was left in the bedchamber, neither little nor great. Then Judith, standing by his bed, said in her heart, O mighty God Ahiah of all power, look at this present upon the works of mine hand for the exaltation of Jerusalem. For now is the time to help thine inheritance and to execute thine enterprises to the destruction of the enemies which are risen against us. Then she came to the pillar of the bed which was at Holophernes' head, and took down his falchion from thence, and approached to his bed, and took hold of the hair of his head, and said, Strengthen me, O mighty God Ahiah of Israel, this day. And she smote twice upon his neck with all her might, and she took away his head from him. Wow. And tumbled his body down from the bed, and pulled down the canopy from the pillars, and anon after she went forth, and gave Holophernes his head to her maid. And she put it in her bag of meat. So they twain went together according to their customs unto prayer. And when they passed the camp, they compassed the valley, and went up the mountain upper Thulier, and came to the gates thereof. Then said Judith afar off to the watchman at the gate, Open, open now the gate, mighty God Ahiah, even of mighty God Ahiah is with us to show his power yet in Jerusalem, and his forces against the enemy, and he had even done this day. Now when the men of her city heard her voice, they made haste to go down to the gate of their city, and they called the elders of the city, and then they ran all together, both small and great, for it was strange unto them that she was come. So they opened the gate and received them, and made a fire for a light, and stood round about them. Then she said to them with a loud voice, Praise, praise mighty God Ahiah, praise mighty God Ahiah, I say, for he had not taken away his mercy from the house of Israel, but had destroyed our enemies by mine hands this night. So she took the head out of the bag, and showed it, and said unto them, Behold, the head of Holophernes, the chief captain of the army of Ashur, and behold, the canopy wherein he did lie in his drunkenness, and mighty God Ahiah has smitten him by the hand of a woman. As mighty God Ahiah liveth, who had kept me in my way that I went, my countenance had deceived him to his destruction, and yet had not he not committed sin with me to defile and shame me. Then all the people were wonderfully astonished, and bowed themselves and worshipped mighty God Ahiah, and said with one accord, Blessed thou be, mighty God Ahiah, which hast this day brought to naught the enemies of thy people. Blessed be his name. Then said Ozias unto her, O daughter, blessed art thou of the most high God, above all the women upon the earth, and blessed be mighty God Ahiah, which have created the heavens and the earth, which have directed thee to the cutting off of the head of the chief of our enemies. For this thy confidence shall not depart from the heart of men, which remember the power of mighty God Ahiah forever. And mighty God Ahiah turn these things to thee for a perpetual praise, to visit thee in good things, because thou hast not spared thy life for the affliction of our nation, but hast revenged our ruin, walking a straight way before mighty God Ahiah. And all the people said, So be it, so be it. Then said Judith unto them, Hear me now, my brethren, and take this head, and hang it upon the highest place of your walls. And so soon as the morning shall appear, and the sun shall come forth upon the earth, take you every one his weapons, and go forth every valiant man out of the city, and set you a captain over them. And though you would go down into the field toward the watch of the Assyrians, but go not down. Then they shall take their armor, and shall go into their camp, and raise up the captains of the army of Ashur, and shall run to the tent of Holophernes, but shall not find him. Then fear shall fall upon them, and they shall flee before your face. So you and all the inhabitant the coast of Israel shall pursue them, and overthrow them as they go. But before you do these things, call me Achior the Ammonite, that he may see and know him that despiseth the house of Israel, and that sent him to us as it were to his death. Then they called Achior out of the house of Ozias, and when he was come and saw the head of Holophernes in a man's hand in the assembly of the people, he fell down on his face, and his spirit failed. But when they had recovered him, he fell at Judith's feet and reverenced her, and said, Blessed art thou in all the tabernacles of Judah, and in all nations which hearing thy name shall be astonished. Now therefore tell me all the things that thou hast done in these days. Then Judith declared unto him in the midst of the people all that she had done from the day that she went forth until the hour she spake unto him. And when she had left off speaking, the people shouted with a loud voice and made a joyful noise in their city. And when Achior had seen all that mighty God Ahiah of Israel had done, he believed in mighty God Ahiah greatly, and circumcised the flesh of his foreskin, and was joined into the house of Israel unto this day. And as soon as the morning arose, they hanged the head of Holophernes upon the wall, and every man took his weapon, and they went forth by bands unto the straits of the mountain. But when the Assyrians saw them, they sent to their leader, which came to their captain and tribunes, and to every one of their rulers. So they came to Holophernes' tent, and said to him that had the charge of all his things, Waken now, our Lord, for the slaves have been bold to come down against us to battle, that they may be utterly destroyed. Then went in Boaz and knocked at the door of the tent, for he thought that he had slept with Judith. But because none answered, he opened it and went in to the bedchamber, and found him cast upon the floor dead, and his head was taken from him. Therefore he cried with a loud voice, with weeping and sighing, and a mighty cry, and rent his garment. After he went into the tent where Judith lodged, and when he found her not, he leaped out to the people and cried, These slaves have dealt treacherously. One woman of the Hebrews had brought shame upon the house of King Nebuchadnezzar, for behold, Holophernes lie upon the ground without his head. When the captain of the Assyrians' army heard these words, they rent their coats, and their minds were wonderfully troubled, and there was a cry and a very great noise throughout the camp. And when they that were in the tents heard, they were astonished at this thing that was done. And fear and tremble fell upon them, so that there was no man that thus abide in the sight of his neighbor, but rushing out all together, they fled into every way of the plain and of the hill country. They also had camped in the mountains run about Bethulia, fled away. Then the children of Israel, every one that was a warrior among them, rushed out upon them. Then said Ozias to Bethomestin, and to Babiah, and Kobiah, and Kola, and to all the coast of Israel, such as should tell the things that were done, and that all should rush forth upon their enemies to destroy them. Now when the children of Israel heard it, they all fell upon them with one consent, and slew them into Kobiah. Likewise also they that came from Jerusalem and from all the hill country, for men had told them what things were done in the camp of their enemies, and they that were in Gilead and in Galilee chased them with a great slaughter until they were past Damascus and the borders thereof. And the residue that dwelt at Bethulia fell upon the camp of Assur, and spoiled them, and were greatly enriched. And the children of Israel that returned from the slaughter had that which remained, and the villages and the cities that were in the mountains and in the plain got many spoils, for the multitude was very great. Then Joachim the high priest and the ancients of the children of Israel that dwelt in Jerusalem came to behold the good things that mighty God Ahiah had showed to Israel, and to see Judith, and to salute her. And when they came unto her, they blessed her with one accord, and said unto her, Thou art the exaltation of Jerusalem, thou art the great glory of Israel, thou art the great rejoicing of our nation. Thou hast done all these things by thine hand. Thou hast done much good to Israel, and mighty God Ahiah is pleased therewith. Blessed be thou of the mighty God Ahiah forevermore. And all the people said, So be it. Amen. And the people spoiled the camp the space of 30 days, and they gave unto Judah Holophernes his tent, and all his plate, and his beds and vessels, and all his stuff. And she took it and laid it up on her mule, and made ready her carts, and laid them thereon. Then all the women of Israel ran together to see her, and blessed her, and made a dance among them for her. And she took branches in her hand, and gave also to the women that were with her. And they put a garland of olive upon her, and her maid that was with her, and she went before all the people in the dance, leading all the women, and all the men of Israel followed in their armor with garlands and with songs in their mouth. Then Judah began to sing this thanksgiving in all Israel, and all the people sang after her this song of praise. And Judah said, Begin unto my mighty God Ahiah with timbrels, sing unto mighty God Ahiah with cymbals, tune unto him a new song, exalt him and call upon his name, Ahiah. For mighty God Ahiah breaketh the battles, for among the camps in the midst of the people he had delivered me out of the hands of them that persecuted me. Ashur came out of the mountains from the north. He came with 10,000 of his army, the multitude whereof stopped the torrents, and his horsemen have covered the hills. He bragged that he would burn up my borders, and kill my young men with the sword, and dash the sucking children against the ground, and make mine infants as a prey, and my virgins as a spoil. But mighty God Ahiah had disappointed them by the hand of a woman. For the mighty one did not fall by the young men, neither did the sons of the Titans smite him, nor have giants set upon him, but Judith the daughter of Merari weakened him with the beauty of her countenance. For she put off the garments of her widowhood for the exultation of those that were oppressed in Israel, and anointed her face with ointment, and bound her hair in a tire, and took a linen garment to deceive him. Her sandals ravished his eyes, her beauty took his mind prisoner, and the falchion passed through his neck. The Persians quaked at her boldness, and the Medes were daunted at her hardiness. Then my afflicted shouted for joy, and my weak ones cried aloud, but they were astonished. These lifted up their voices, but they were overthrown. The sons of the damsels have pierced them through, and wounded them as fugitives. Children, they perished by the battle of mighty God Ahiah. I will sing unto mighty God Ahiah a new song. O mighty God Ahiah, art thou great and glorious, wonderful in strength and invincible. Let all creatures serve thee, for thou speakest, and they were made. Thou didst send forth thy spirit, and it created them, and there is none that can resist thy voice. For the mountains shall be moved from their foundations with the waters. The rocks shall melt as wax at thy presence, yet thou art merciful to them that fear thee. For all sacrifice is too little for a sweet Savior unto thee, and all that fat is not sufficient for thy burnt offerings. But he that feared mighty God Ahiah is great at all times. Woe to the nations that rise up against my kindred, for mighty God Ahiah will take vengeance of them in the day of judgment, in putting fire and worms in their flesh, and they shall fill them and weep forever. Now as soon as they entered into Jerusalem, they worshipped mighty God Ahiah, and as soon as the people were purified, they offered their burnt offerings and their free offerings and their gifts. Judith also dedicated all the stuff of Holophernes which the people had given her, and gave the canopy which she had taken out of his bedchamber for a gift unto the mighty God Ahiah. So the people continued feasting in Jerusalem before the sanctuary for the space of 3 months, and Judith remained with her. After this time, everyone returned to his own inheritance, and Judith went to Bethulia, and remained in her own possessions, and was in her time honorable in all the country. Excuse me. And many desired her, but none knew her all the days of her life. After that, Manasseh her husband was dead, and was gathered to his people. But she increased more and more in honor, and waxed old in her husband's house, being 105 years old, and made her maid free. So she died in Bethulia, and they buried her in the cave of her husband Manasseh. And the house of Israel lamented her 7 days, and before she died, she did distribute her goods to all them that were nearest of kindred to Manasseh her husband, and to them that were the nearest of her kindred. And there was none that made the children of Israel any more afraid in the days of Judith, nor a long time after her death. And that's the end of the book of Judith. Thank you for listening.